Let's just start with a bit of this. Just a riding horse. So the main thing in riding horse is the legs. So it's a posture for strengthening the legs, but also developing the legs as something that's just other than a simple support. So when I move around, when I move my body, I want it to come from the activity of my legs. Now that sounds obvious, but actually if you watch people moving, you see it's an activity of the mind that has given an order to the legs. So the legs are very much secondary. So we want to feel that there's some inherent real activity in the legs that gives the movement that we produce a certain quality, a quality of spirit and liveliness. So my legs are obviously holding me up, but they're also trying to pull me down. And that's, in a sense, more important. So let's just try just that one where we just sink down. Just feel the legs actively bending, actively pulling you down before they then squeeze you up. So when you pull with the legs, the toes become important. So as I squeeze myself up here, at the end of that squeeze, my toes really expand and open up, spread. And then the pull down starts with a clenching of the toes. And especially the little toe, surprisingly. So feel your little toe really going out and then just curl them up. And that will take you down with this widening in the legs. So this is more like the big toes pressing down, and then this is the little toes pulling down. So with each repetition, just feel it getting more difficult to come up. We want to really settle into our weight. So here, imagine someone is just pushing a little bit on your back, keeping you down. Then here, you really have to squeeze to get up. So we're always trying to work against an imagined resistance, just to make it a little bit more real, just to activate my spirit. So here I push, or rather squeeze. And just feel the necessity of turning. So as I come up, if I'm really being pressured by that person, if I just push against them, then we'll just get into a fight. So what I try and do is twist. I sort of wriggle my way up. So I'm twisting from side to side a little bit as I come up. So twisting will always help you just slide and slip through things. One more. And now let's just come back to this exercise, knocking the gate of life. And just feel the feet. So as I turn into this leg, I'm coming into this leg because this foot has clenched the ground like this, like the foot is trying to make a fist, starting with the little toe. So what that is trying to do effectively is do this with the foot. So just curl it up, but also pull it in this way. So it's that has pulled me round. And that enables this foot to really open up. So now these toes have really spread out. My little toe is reaching into the darkness, reaching into a region I can't see. And then that hits the ground and pulls like this, like hooking. And it's that pulls me round. So we really want to feel the activity of the feet upon the ground, responsible for the turning. So this foot opens up and then closes, and this foot opens up. So just trying to get the mind that is usually thinking to itself to instead get involved in an intensification of what you're doing, getting more and more involved. So like concentrating, you're concentrating more and more. So there's no sense of just going through the motions. If you find the exercise flat, if you find yourself thinking to yourself, getting distracted, then feel ashamed. Now let's try the one where we come onto the toes. So first of all, just feeling the heel just extending down into the ground. So a sense of earthing. And then just coming onto the front of the foot. But we want to do that by really rocking back into the heel and allow the pressure on the heel to spread the toes, and then pull the toes into the ground and just use the toes to draw yourself out of the heel and into the ball of the foot. So now the heels are off the ground. So the difficulty is just keeping the lower back relaxed so that your sacrum can hang down through it. Because when you bring your heels up, it will tend to make your bum stick out behind you. And now just rocking back onto the heels. Remember, one at a time. So I extend the heel backwards and I cut it under. And then I extend this heel backwards and cut it under. That brings up this heel again. So we just make an exercise of extending the heel in a very similar way that we extend the toes. I'm just imagining that my heel is really squeezing and extending backwards. And then by rolling my tail under, I bring the heel under. So the heel is very much connected to your coccyx. So my tail is trying to point backwards without my bum sticking out too much. And then I just roll it under. So my tailbone, my coccyx, can move a little bit relative to the sacrum. And then just back again. Feel the difference between standing up. So having this sense that my legs are holding me up with this sense of a remoteness from the ground. And the feeling that my legs are opening to try and pull me down. So a real voracious hunger for the ground. And that will encourage the body to become round. that Neanderthal roundness, this feeling that you've got all this sort of structural detail sprouting out of you. So very much the widening here. And now let's just breathe. Just try and keep the legs pulling. So really that's just a quality of spirit, real sort of intense connectedness. So here we're just flexing the spine, really trying to round out the lumbar spine. And then here just allowing it to extend a little bit. So the pulling down with the legs is very much part of this flexing phase. And then the squeezing with the legs is very much part of this extending phase. Try and get the flexing here to really start from a really localized tightness in the dantian. Opening in the hips. So the crocodile legs, the feeling that my legs have come out of the side of the sacrum rather than from underneath it. And then just back to riding horse. Feel the dantian. So your center of gravity, it's like a black hole, almost like a really dark place that just holds you together. Feel that play between the legs wanting to hungrily go down and then squeezing up in protest. It's like a breathing going on all the time. There's this. Really connect with these sort of natural rhythms of the body. There's like a pulse. Was it Mark telling us that that teacher he went to see who told him, become aware of the heart of the legs? So something in your legs is pumping or breathing. It's like it's feeding. Your legs and feet are feeding on the ground. Imagine you had a piece of elastic and you stretch it a little bit so it's taut, and then you just stretch it and let it come back, but only let it come back to that bit where it's a little bit taut. So the elastic has this quality of breathing, but it never becomes slack. So that's the feeling we want in the body. And the breathing, even the breathing in the lungs. There's always resistance. There's always that drawback, trying to pull everything into stillness. And we have to really make an effort to actually maintain the movement. That's the spirit. That's just making sure it never stops. And now let's just try just a little bit of the heart qigong. It's this bit here that's the important bit, really. So just really releasing the lower back as the arms go up. So imagine I'm bringing the whole room into my heart. Cleaning the spine. My spine is straightening. And as I get beyond this point with my arms, really, there's something in my upper back can just stretch open. My thymus feels like it's lifting, and that enables my tail, my coccyx, to just drop down. So we still need this space in the legs. The feeling is that the sacrum can drop down between the legs. So here, up. Something in me releases down as well as up. If I'm extending up anxiously, then I'll tend to bring tension into the lower back in order to get more reach. But it's the point where I just let go of that and just let the sacrum drop. That's when there can be release. So we're trying to release the energy, not simply extend it. So I start the extension and then I just release down, and then something can just come out of my hands. And now let's just try it one at a time. So just up with one hand. Feel like you're holding onto a bar, and then just release the sacrum down. And just feel that stretch through the body. And then just draw this hand down and reach up with this one. Like you're ringing the bells. Let's try just a little bit of this stepping one. So here, really active feet. So my toes are spreading and then grabbing the ground in order to pull me into the foot. So there's a sense that this pulling the ground, which is so important, is pulling you down into your legs. But there's also a sense that it pulls you down into your dantian. So without this use of the legs, it's very difficult to get a real sense of being in the dantian. You can sort of abstractly put your mind there, but it's not the same as this feeling that everything is just being pulled down into it. So a sense that the activity that's drawing me across and into the leg is starting here. My dantian contracts, and that is basically just shortening the distance between your foot and your dantian, so pulling you into the leg, but also in the sense that it's pulling my upper body down into the dantian as well. And let's just bring it back. Another good exercise for that, it's just really opening the sacrum and just getting the bum in. If there's any sense that your sacrum is angling backwards a little bit, then your lower back is basically just pushing you away from the ground, up into your head, and the body becomes disconnected without a real gravitational center. And so the sense that my dantian is pulling back towards the sacrum, and that is really rounding out the sacrum. So the sacrum becomes like the back of a circle, back of a sphere, and a real feeling that the bottom of the sacrum is cutting under. So no sense of the sacrum angling backwards. And it is difficult because it just requires you to really bend your legs and get down. And it does hurt the legs. Okay, now let's just try lifting the foot. So 1, 2, 3. So we just want to get the knee just slightly higher than the hip. So 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. Feel the supporting leg. So another curve, if you like. We've been working on the 5 curves. Now here's another one. Basically the curve of the foot, the curve of the outside edge from the big toe curving around into the heel. So when I come into the foot, I really want to feel like I've come around like this. And so I really get into the outside edge of the foot. And you can feel if there's any sort of, the knee wanting to come in, it's just pure anxiety, because that outside edge. It's not familiar to us, and it feels weak, and it feels like there's not very much real sort of push against the ground with it. Now, that's why we like it. That's why we want it. So we just have to just practice so that we can just really sink into that outside edge. And then I get this feeling that I'm contained in a circle. So I'm going down and 1, 2, 3. And just pulling the knee up just really helps the dantian. 1, 2. So we want the feeling that it's the tightening of the dantian that's pulled the knee up. I mean, it's not really, but it just brings your mind more and more into the dantian with each lift. So 1, 2, and then here, I get this real sense of tightness here. If people are overweight, then they just can't do it because there's too much of an obstacle here. And so this is one of the reasons why it's just a good idea to be trim. So here this pulls up. So the knees, again, very active. So to get into the outside edge, it's basically the knee that does the curve that we've been working on. The knee is trying to escape. My foot constrains it. My foot being on the ground constrains it. This is very much a bow. The leg isn't underneath me, it's out at the side. The foot is underneath me, otherwise I'd fall. But the leg is very much a bow. And if the balance is difficult, you can just have your hand on a wall. Because it's not really a balance exercise, it's just more intensification of the spirit when you really come together and allow yourself unify and organize around the dantian. So 1, 2, and 3. One, 2. Pull the knee up and just feel how that stretches the lower back and just pulls your bum under. I was reading a book on stretching by this physiotherapist with 40 years experience, who specializes in muscle lengthening. And he says, when it comes to stretching, in a sense, what's most important is that you do it at least twice a day. If possible, 3, and if possible, more. He says you don't have to do very much, like 10 minutes each time. But he says it's that enables you to progress. In a sense, what we're doing, it's very similar to stretching. So we're tightening the muscle first and then really getting it to stretch almost of its own. So rather than me pulling the two ends to stretch it, I just want this sense of expansion within the contraction. Everything that we do really should just try and come back to it in the day. You don't have to do the whole sequence, but just an exercise that you find interesting. Almost become obsessed by it. I mean, something like this one, you could be pulling your foot up whilst you're doing the washing up or the cooking. And now before we do the form, let's just do a little bit of this one, because this is the machine that really generates the form. I yield. So when I yield with my right hand, I turn to the right. This is Young style yielding. And I come into the right foot, and the hand drops. The hand drops down because there's a sense of heaviness, a sense of condensing. My vaporous hand reaches out, and then as it slowly comes in, it's becoming heavy and liquid. And that allows the other one to go out. So really it's in and out, and we just round it off to make it this smooth, continuous. So the hand that yields, that comes down, just allow it to brush the thigh. So we're using the body to generate energy. Rather than simply to do a task or keep fit or any of these other things. So that requires the mind to become still within it, so that, because the energy that we're producing is fine. So we're sort of refining energy. So we're obviously using energy to do the movement. So the energy that you're getting from the food that you've eaten, we're using something that's quite coarse and converting it into something that's finer. That process cannot be calculated. It's not an economy. It's something I just have to release into and hope for the best, in a sense. Just something will happen. And when you get into the energy, there's a certain feeling that will become apparent. And it's really just a feeling of like a smile. There's a contented smile right inside you. And it's relaxed, and it's round, and it's soft. So like John's image of the dragonfly. When I was 11, I went camping with my best friend in Pembrokeshire. And we were walking one day and we came across this pond. And it was just the time when all the mayflies were hatching. So like these small dragonflies, just thousands upon thousands, they all hatch on the same day. They all come out of their larva phase so that they can breed, because they only live for a day. So there's like this shimmering, iridescent mass just rising like a mist from the surface of the pond. And it was just so magical. So we all have experiences of something that was just breathtakingly spectacular, but also soft. Often they're experiences that are lost to others in your company. So you're catching something of the event that other people are just not picking up on. That's really important. bring it back. Let's try a little bit of a form. So first of all, just getting attention posture right. The sense of the head being extended upwards. Have the hand in the neck and just be pulling the back of the head upwards a little bit, and just feel how that assists to the lengthening of the neck is also allowing your lumbar spine to flatten out a little bit as the sacrum drops down. So always with this space between the knees, so the sacrum can feel that it's got like a clear passage down to the ground. It doesn't have to go through the barrier of the legs. And then just sinking down again with this bow in the leg. So the knee goes out. That's what takes me down. It's my knee traveling out here. And then I can step. And then just circle the hands as you come into that foot, bringing these toes round. Use this release with the wrists here, just to, again, retrieve the heavy sacrum, because every time we move the body, this area will get tense a little bit. So here my sacrum is dropping. And then here it's like my lower back just rounds out a little bit like that, and that helps the elbows come down. And now just reaching forwards, yielding, reaching up the arm a little bit more. Ward off and brush knee. Bring it back to the heavy sacrum, just hanging relaxedly. And then again, just what has to happen here. Okay, so let's try it again, and I'll do the other side. It's my knee going out here that draws me down. So, and I get that to happen by a subtle turn of the hips this way. Now let's try one more, and I'll face this way. So I'll do the left side again.